The defeat of the Eastern Roman Empire by Khan Krum in the Varbitsa Pass in July 1811 was a catastrophe, the echoes of which would haunt Constantinople for many years to come. Emperor Nikephoros I fell, his army was almost completely destroyed, and the Bulgarians celebrated. But this was only the beginning. While the empire was recovering, torn by internal turmoil and external threats, Khan Krum was preparing to strike again. Let me remind you, you are on the Amazing History channel, a place for those who truly love history. Today, you will see the continuation of the great Byzantine-Bulgarian confrontation. This video was made possible thanks to your comments and support, so don't forget to subscribe and stay active. Let's go! In July 1811, the Eastern Roman Empire found itself in a deep crisis. Emperor Nikephoros I fell in battle, his troops were almost completely destroyed, and the high command suffered catastrophic losses. Staurakios, the son of Nikephoros and the nominal successor, received a fatal spinal wound during the battle, which effectively removed him from the struggle for power. In these conditions, a fierce struggle for the throne broke out in Constantinople. He was the husband of Procopia, the daughter of Nikephoros I. He was supported by the capital's aristocracy, influential eunuchs, and part of the military, who feared anarchy. On October 2, 1811, he was proclaimed emperor under the name Michael I, and Staurakios was forced to retire to a monastery, where he soon died. Meanwhile, Khan Krum was consolidating his power. Despite the fact that Pliska had been devastated, the Bulgarian army achieved a decisive victory, and now it could freely raid Byzantine lands. For Krum, the most important task was uniting his diverse state, which included the Proto-Bulgarian nobility, Slavic tribes, and even some Byzantine prisoners of war, whom he actively used for economic and military purposes. The victory over the empire only strengthened his authority among the Slavic chieftains, who now saw him as a defender of the Slavs from Byzantine influence. Next, I want to make a small digression about whether it is correct to call Krum a Khan. After all, there are no surviving Bulgarian inscriptions with his own title. Byzantine chroniclers generally called Krum, in the Greek manner, the Archon of the Bulgars. However, it is known that the Proto-Bulgarians came from the steppe Turkic peoples, where the title of Khan or Kagan was traditional for supreme rulers. Therefore, it is logical to assume that Bulgarian rulers, starting with Asparuk, used the title of Khan. Over time, later rulers such as Boris I and Simeon began to use Slavic or Byzantine titles like Niaz and Tsar. But since I am talking about the earliest period of Bulgarian history, I will use the title of Khan. In Constantinople, Michael I faced serious problems. He did not possess military talent and did not have the trust of the troops, which caused growing discontent among the soldiers. More and more officers and soldiers were looking towards Leo the Armenian, a talented commander who led the Anatolian theme. Leo had already proven himself in wars against the Arabs, which only strengthened his reputation. Although the empire's main focus was on the Balkans, Arab raids on Asia Minor did not cease. However, the civil war in the Caliphate gave the Byzantines a respite, which Michael I was unable to take advantage of. In this situation, it soon became clear that the crisis of power in Constantinople would continue. By the spring of 812, Khan Krum had prepared for a new offensive. His goal was the chain of Byzantine fortresses along the northern border of the empire. These fortifications were crucial for defending the frontier and controlling routes into the Balkan interior. Therefore, capturing them would weaken Byzantium's defenses and make further raids easier. In May 812, the Bulgars crossed the mountain passes and besieged the city of Debelt, a strategic hub through which the coastal road connecting Constantinople with the Black Sea ports passed. Anchialos and Mesembria, the Byzantine garrison could not count on quick help, since Michael I's army was not yet ready. Thanks to well-organized siege operations, Krum managed to capture Debelt by early June. The garrison and the townspeople surrendered. According to the common practice of that time, a significant part of the population was relocated deeper into Bulgaria, which strengthened the demographic and economic potential of Krum's state. This was also a tactical move. The deportation of the local residents prevented the possibility of recovery and helped to populate the Bulgarian lands with a loyal population. Meanwhile, Michael I still tried to gather an army and march to help the besieged city, but when they learned of its fall, the troops became confused. Unrest began among the soldiers. To calm them down, the emperor was forced to increase their pay, which drained the treasury even more. The fall of the belt caused panic among the population of Thrace. Many residents began to leave their settlements, fleeing from the impending Bulgarian advance, which effectively turned the region into a deserted buffer zone. Taking advantage of the weakness of the Byzantine defenses, the Bulgarians continued their advance. Their detachments ravaged northern Thrace, reaching Adrianople. The Sofia Basin finally came under Bulgarian control, which secured their dominance in the western part of the Balkans. Krum also captured almost all the Black Sea ports north of Sozopol, except for the fortress of Mysia. What was especially alarming for Byzantium was that some soldiers and officers switched to Krum's side. Among the defectors were not only ordinary soldiers, but also high-ranking military commanders, which allowed the Bulgarians to gain access to Byzantine tactics and organizational experience. During Krum's offensive, it became clear that Michael I was unable to effectively command the army and that the empire needed a new military leader. An increasing number of officers and aristocrats were looking toward the talented commander Leo the Armenian, who would soon play a key role in the events to come. After the successful conquest of northern Thrace, Khan Krum began administering the new territories. The newly acquired lands were controlled by a mixed administration that included both Bulgarian nobility and Byzantine defectors, military leaders and officials who sided with Krum. Their knowledge helped the Bulgarians better adapt to governing Byzantine cities and to use Roman tactics. After completing the reorganization in the spring of 812, Krum led his army to the strategically important Black Sea port of Nisembria. This city was located on a peninsula, had strong walls, and controlled the trade routes on the western coast of the Black Sea. Before beginning the assault, Krum sent an embassy to Constantinople with a proposal for peace. His terms were relatively moderate: the establishment of a border in northern Thrace, an annual tribute from Byzantium in the form of clothing and dyed skins, the right for Bulgarian merchants to trade in Constantinople without duties, and the exchange of prisoners, deserters, and asylum seekers. Emperor Michael I was inclined to accept these terms, but his spiritual advisors objected, stating that returning Bulgarian Christians would violate the gospel. This caused a delay in the negotiations, which Krum took advantage of. Angered by Mikhail's refusal, Krum surrounded Mesembria in mid-October 1812. Despite its strong fortifications, the siege lasted only 2 weeks, thanks to the use of siege equipment developed by Byzantine engineers who had defected. Seeing the hopelessness of the situation, the garrison surrendered and the city was looted. Among the spoils were huge reserves of gold, silver, and goods. Also among the spoils were 36 siphons for launching Greek fire, the secret Byzantine weapon. After the looting, Krum, following his tactics, deported the population to Bulgaria, and the city was left abandoned. With the onset of winter, military action ceased, and Krum withdrew to the north, preparing for the next campaign. At the beginning of 1813, Krum launched a winter raid on Adrianople, aiming to capture the city with a sudden strike. However, his plan was uncovered by Byzantine prisoners who managed to escape and warn the garrison. Upon learning about the planned attack, Michael I gathered his troops and moved to confront the enemy. The Bulgarians were taken by surprise and suffered heavy losses. Although the battle was small, it was Mikhail's first victory, and he was quick to use it to strengthen his authority. After making sure that the Abbasid Caliphate was not a threat, as it was engulfed in a civil war that tied down Muslim forces, Michael I decided to focus the army against Bulgaria. He began mobilizing troops throughout the entire empire, including the eastern themes. By the spring of 1813, the emperor's army had reached southeastern Thrace, gathering up to 30,000 men, 26,000 soldiers from the Themes, most of whom were recruits, and 4,000 elite tagmata, warriors, as well as warriors from the eastern Themes, Anatolia, Armenia, and Cappadocia. Were not eager to take part in the Balkan campaign, but they obeyed the order. The emperor was accompanied by two key commanders, Leo the Armenian, the strategos of the Anatolian theme, one of the best generals of the era, and John Aplakes, the strategos of the Macedonian theme, an experienced commander. With these forces, Mikhail hoped to fight a decisive battle against Krum, but the fate of the campaign turned out somewhat differently. The campaign began disastrously due to the slowness of Emperor Mikhail I. He delayed the campaign and then, after setting out, constantly postponed a decisive offensive against the Bulgars. The army assembled in Thrace stood idle for at least a month, which undermined morale. On May 4th, there was a solar eclipse, which the army perceived as an omen of disaster. Additionally, the situation was worsened by food supply problems. Due to the prolonged stay on Byzantine territory, the imperial troops were forced to procure provisions, which resulted in the mass looting of the Thracian population by their own soldiers. Dissatisfaction within the army was growing, and under pressure, Mikhail I finally decided to take action. The emperor sent the troops to the Bulgarian border near Adrianople, but once again he delayed, organizing another halt. These delays gave Khan Krum the opportunity to gather large forces, including reinforcements from the Slavs and the Avars. Nevertheless, even after the arrival of his allies, Krum realized that his army was outnumbered. On June 7th, Krum set up camp near the abandoned Roman fort of Versinikia, waiting for reconnaissance data. Both armies were aware of each other's presence, but neither side was in a hurry to start the battle. Michael's top commanders, Ioan Aplakis and Leo the Armenian, persistently pressed for an attack, but the emperor consistently refused. For 2 weeks, the armies played a strange game. They left their camps, took up positions, demonstrated readiness for battle, but limited themselves to only skirmishes from a distance. The summer heat, lack of food and water hit the heavily armed Byzantine troops especially hard, increasing demoralization, especially among the Anatolians. On June 21, the commander's patience ran out. Ioan Aplakis informed the emperor that on the morning of June 22, he would attack the Bulgarians, expecting that Mikhail would support him. Leo the Armenian also approved this plan, assuring the emperor that the troops were ready to fight. Under pressure from his generals, Mikhail was forced to give his consent. On the morning of June 22, both armies lined up in battle formation north of Adrianople. The Bulgarian army was smaller in number, but Krum used a ruse. The Slavic infantry formed the first line, visible to the enemy. The main reserves, including mounted archers and heavy cavalry, were hidden behind the hill. The Byzantines positioned themselves on the ridge crest. The themes on the left flank were led by Leo the Armenian. The center was made up of tagmata under the command of Mikhail. The right flank was led by Ioan Aplakis with Macedonian and Thracian troops. The battle was initiated by Ioan Aplakis, who fiercely attacked the left flank of the Bulgars. His Macedonians and Thracians, being better armed, began to push back the Slavs. The course of events promised a glorious victory for Byzantium. However, Mikhail remained indifferent. He did not support the attack and did not give orders to the central and left flanks, watching the battle as an outside observer. The reasons for this are unclear. Perhaps he feared the political rise of Ioan, or simply did not understand the tactical situation. Krum noticed the enemy's passivity and took advantage of the opportunity. He brought hidden reserves into the battle. Mounted archers outflanked the Macedonians and Thracians, showering them with a hail of arrows. Krum's heavy cavalry crashed into the Byzantine ranks, increasing the pressure. At that moment, the Anatolian troops of Leo the Armenian suddenly began to retreat in good order. The reasons for this also remain unclear, but there is suspicion that Lev had made an agreement with Krum in advance. When the Anatolians left the battlefield, the Bulgarian horse archers intensified their assault, and the organized retreat turned into a panicked flight. Seeing the chaos, the tagmata in the center also began to retreat, and the battle turned into a rout. The surrounded troops of Ioana fought to the end, but deprived of support, they were doomed. Ioana Plakis, renowned for her bravery, died along with thousands of her men. The Battle of Versinikia lasted only an hour, but its outcome was a shock. Krum, who at first doubted that the victory was real, forbade immediate pursuit, fearing a trick. Only later, realizing that the enemy was truly fleeing, the Bulgars began looting the Roman camp. Emperor Michael, along with the Tagmata and the Anatolians, hurriedly fled to Constantinople, leaving about 3,000 dead on the battlefield, mostly from the Macedonian and Thracian units. This defeat not only worsened Byzantium's situation, but also opened the road to the capital for Krum. After the crushing defeat at Versinikia, Michael I Rangabe lost control over the situation in the empire. His legitimacy was undermined, the army was demoralized, and the ruling circles in Constantinople began to look for a new leader. In the end, Michael I was forced to abdicate the throne on July 11, 813 in favor of his rival Leo the Armenian, who ascended the throne as Leo V Krum, taking advantage of his opponent's weakness, immediately began preparing to besiege the capital. His troops had already reached Constantinople, plundering the city's outskirts. Krum did not immediately begin the siege, but instead offered the Byzantines peace talks, hoping that the emperor, frightened by the disaster at Versinikia, would accept the terms. However, during one of the meetings held at the city walls, the Byzantines tried to kill Krum by setting up an ambush. The Khan managed to escape. This incident made peace negotiations impossible. Enraged, Krum gave the order to destroy everything in his path. His troops burned temples and villages in the vicinity of the capital, captured many prisoners, and took them to Bulgaria. The new emperor understood that he could not defeat Krum in open battle, so he began preparing the defense of the capital and looking for ways to prolong the conflict. In the winter of 813-814, Krum, despite the harsh weather conditions, launched another campaign against the Byzantines. He attacked Adrianople, captured the city and relocated its population to Bulgaria, as he had previously done with the inhabitants of Debelt and Mesembria. At the same time, the Khan continued to prepare for a decisive strike against Constantinople. According to Byzantine chronicles, he assembled powerful siege equipment, including battering rams and siege engines, and also reinforced the assault towers with iron for storming the walls. However, Krum did not have time to carry out his plan. In the spring of 1814, on the eve of a new campaign, the Khan suddenly passed away. The reasons for his death remain unclear to this day. Byzantine sources claim that he died of a stroke or illness, but there are also theories about a possible conspiracy among those close to him. The death of Krum halted the imminent invasion of Constantinople and allowed Byzantium to catch its breath. A struggle for the throne began in Bulgaria, and his son Amurtag became the new ruler, who soon concluded a peace treaty with Leo I. This ended one of the most dramatic episodes of the Byzantine-Bulgarian Wars, leaving Bulgaria a strong and formidable opponent of the Eastern Roman Empire. Well, that's all from me. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos. Goodbye, everyone.